Both the voting and taxation was digitalized way before I became Prime Minister in 2014. We have had e-taxation ever since the beginning of the century, and we have had e-voting ever since 2005. So basically, why we have all of that and many other electronic services is all thanks to us having a digital identity. So every Estonian, from basically child to those who are retired, everybody has an electronic identity. Blockchain we have used to safeguard our data. In essence, blockchain is a very good way of registering ownership, registering rights to something, and in the Estonian case, the most prominent that we have been using government-wise is keeping our health data intact and keeping it safe. So basically, for a few years already, we have used blockchain technology to make sure that every Estonian's health data that is completely online is safe and nobody can modify it. Most cases that government is using is to keep data integrity, to keep data safe. Of course, there are a lot of private companies who have done ICOs, who have tens of ways of using blockchain, but in my opinion, every government should at least consider using blockchain, because while you build digital information system, you need to make sure that the system has very solid security. It needs to be just like blockchain technology is helping to be in different locations at the same time, so you are not kind of dependent on one server or potential malfunction of one location. I think in blockchain the problem is that you can actually trace back the vote. I don't know, perhaps there is an opportunity to design the system otherwise, but the Estonian voting system is designed this way that there is no way of tracing back who voted for whom, because this is in our constitution, voting has to be secret and it's anonymous, and that's why we rely on a different system. In Estonia, I think the biggest secret we have, that we are very open about talking to everybody, why e-voting has been such a success is because we have very good and very safe electronic identity. Without electronic identity, without a properly designed system, I would not recommend the e-voting for anyone. So in this respect, I think that blockchain might be a solution if somebody can design it properly, but in our case, I think it works just fine with this Estonian version of electronic identity. I think the first use cases I became familiar with was when I was still in office as Prime Minister, and I was told by my advisors that we are experimenting with this technology. Of course, I have known cryptocurrencies for many years, just superficially, but I think it's fair to say that cryptocurrencies are only a small part of blockchain technology. They are the most visible part, obviously, especially Bitcoin, especially Ether, but this is not everything there is to this technology. I have been working with several crypto companies. I have my own small advisory company, and I have been advising several. Most recently, I became a chairman of a board in a very promising Baltic startup called Limpo. This is something that I immediately related to because I'm a runner myself, and Limpo's mission is to motivate people to exercise more, exercise better, with better results. And I think the way they are rewarding people for their exercise is actually helping people to, especially during weekends, to do the kind of last mile or stretch the last mile. And I do have some limb tokens myself, and small amounts of Bitcoin and Ether as well. But yeah, limb tokens and also some other tokens from some crypto companies. I think it's still too difficult to own and transfer crypto assets. I think it could be much more intuitive. It could be like, having an app which has names of my friends, that has names of the tokens, has names of my different wallets that I can transfer, instead of currently having those letters and numbers and very difficult addresses that I need to use every time. Secondly, I think we need whitelisted channels, so that if you want to do something really by the book and you don't want to do anything shady, you want to just sometimes invest in crypto tokens, sometimes sell them, sometimes buy them, you must have some exchanges that do everything by the book, and banks that actually accept that those exchanges do everything by the book. Currently it's so that banks are very superstitious, or like they're very much afraid if you are getting any money changed from Bitcoin to fiat, or from crypto to fiat.
Trying to withdraw.
Yeah, exactly. And I think there could be some sort of white channel or whitelisted channel that can be built, and I think companies like PricewaterhouseCoopers or Estonian would actually work to verify those channels. I don't think that in 2018 September all the idea is so much about being secretive. I think at least 90%, perhaps more, of those people who are doing ICOs, who are investing in crypto, they want to make sure that they actually can get some of that money to fiat if they need to. They want to make sure that they are not in trouble with any legislation. They want to be transparent enough. So I think this anonymity thing and secretive thing, it's becoming a kind of much smaller than all the crypto world, and crypto world can only become mainstream when it has some sort of transparency into it. I think it is not possible to have a system in real world that is completely kind of out of borders or not fitting to any regulation. I think all human beings are essentially residents of some countries. They are traveling to some countries, and if they want to kind of make peace with the fact that they are actually in real world and living in real world, and that they need real world transactions, then I think it's quite logical that they must accept that there will always be interest by the governments and by the banks to make sure that the assets you move are not coming from criminal sources, and there is at least some sort of transparency. I'm not saying that it should be kind of everybody could see what you are doing or how you are transferring, but I think complying to a certain amount of rules is necessary for both ICOs. If they want to get real investments, they must kind of verify themselves and then tell that we are actually kind of there and we actually are going to use the money for good reasons. And also for private citizens, I think if they want to use some of their crypto assets in fiat, perhaps there are some grey channels that I'm not aware of, but normal people would definitely prefer doing it like in a verified manner, and in a way I think crypto channels or blockchain transactions can be much more transparent than many others, and if if there is really need for money laundering, I think cash is still the easiest. So cash is much more difficult to trace than any crypto asset. And I think even though crypto was at one point considered to be very active, very attractive for many transactions, including criminal transactions, I think those days are coming over, or that this is not kind of the thing that crypto is used for in most cases, and I think it has hurt a lot the crypto's reputation. But if you start looking into details, you would be convinced that probably 99% of crypto is actually used for noble causes or for very practical and logical causes, not anything criminal or anything shady or anything secretive. Well, I cannot tell about any particular country, but I think it would make a lot of sense to register more and more transactions in blockchain, because it doesn't make any sense in 2018 to register anything, any ownership, any rights for anything on paper. That's for sure. And now having a centralized ledger can work for some cases, but it's still not very logical to have, let's say, if I have some assets in Estonia, some assets in USA, that I need to kind of go to different locations to have different ledgers. I think as the world is becoming more and more global, the business is becoming more and more global, there is less borders in a way. I think registering your ownership or your rights in a distributed ledger as blockchain makes a lot of sense. And in order to achieve that, to go to masses, I think there is a need to, first of all, create channels that you can actually trade between crypto assets and fiat without your bank freaking out about everything. So that means that there need to be some sort of verification. I would argue that PricewaterhouseCoopers and Estonian and those kind of companies should be the intermediaries to tell the banks that those exchanges are good, they do all the KYC, and vice versa, telling that, you know, the customers of the banks that you should use those exchanges. I think there's a need for that, because it can only become mainstream if it's easy and if it doesn't cause you any problems in real life.